Let's continue. Right, so I want us to analyze. So here's the issue, young man. Let me draw, I think to make it easier, let's start by understanding the creditors control. So we're in video B of accounting 1B, lesson 4. So this is the creditors control. So there's something very important that I want you to understand about this thing. So on the debit side, young man, it decreases because a creditors control, it's a liability. And liabilities, like I taught you from accounting 1A, they increase on the credit side and they decrease on the debit side. Are you following?
Yes.
Right. So here's the issue. On the debit side, credit side, normally that's where you find the balances, the opening balances. So your balance brought down, it's usually here on the first of every month. And then let's assume we bought some goods from creditors on credit on the 16th. You're going to have purchases there. And young men, the purchases will be coming from the creditors' journal. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
Right. And then maybe on the 17th, we were charged interest for late payment. So we'll call this interest expense. Maybe for late payment. So obviously this will come from the general. Am I communicating there?
Yes, sir.
Right. And then for some reason, you decided to return some goods on the 18th. So this will be called purchases returns. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Purchases returns. Why? Because with creditors, you are buying from them. So where would this come from? Purchases returns journal or creditors allowance journal. Are we together? I think the common word that you guys are using is the creditors allowance journal, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
So you put the amount like that. And then somewhat on the 20th, you paid. So this payment will be coming from the cash payment journal. So you put it over there. Am I making sense?
Yes, sir.
And if they offered you discount on the same date when you paid, so this will be called discount received. Discount received. Where would this come from? The general journal. And then you do the same drill like what you did with the debtors control, where you compare the total for the debit side versus the total for the credit side to identify what? Hello? It's just to identify what?
So the is it the carry down the balance?
Yeah, the balance carried down where it's supposed to go. But when you compare the debit side and the credit side, what are you trying to do? You're trying to identify which side is what?
Which side has more? Like which side has the most amount?
You're trying to identify the lesser side.
Oh, okay.
That's what you're trying to identify. You want to identify which side is the lesser side, because on the lesser side, that's where you put the balance carried down, not on the side where it's higher. So after comparing, let's assume maybe the lesser side is the debit side. So here you're going to have balance carried down, but you don't know how much is that amount until you totalize the bigger side, and then you get a figure there. That same amount that you get from here, you have to transfer it here. So that you take that amount minus everything here to give you this. Am I making sense, young man?
Yes, yes, sir.
Right. So that's how you do the creditors control. For today, I want to leave you with theory. I don't want to do practical questions yet. I'll do that with you tomorrow at 10 in the morning, definitely. So, but this is the creditors control. Now, I want to talk about the reconciliation of the creditors control and the debtors list. So young men, it will be something like this. For your creditors control, remember, they will give you something like this. This is the debit side, credit side, creditors list, same story. Like what they did with question 2.6. So this is the debit side, and that is the credit side. Here's what you need to know. On the credit side of your creditors control column, it increases. And then on the debit side, this is where it will be reducing.
Yes.
Something like that. I want to show you the one for the debtors control. So if you are doing the reconciliation for your debtors control, it works like this. So this is your debtors control. And then there you have something like a debtors list over there. So I'm showing you how the format of the reconciliation should look like, how they normally make it look like. So this is your debit. On the debit side, it increases. Credit side, this is where it will be reducing. Debit side increasing. Credit side decreasing. This is for a debtors reconciliation. This is for a creditors reconciliation. Please take pictures of this thing. You will need this, Matugu.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Awesome. Right. So this was to explain the theory behind creditors recon. So if there is anything, maybe an omission, young men. So an omission can be that we were supposed to record an invoice somewhere here. So what do? You put the invoice there on the credit side. So that is if we bought something on credit and it was never recorded in the creditors control column, it has to be recorded in this column, the creditors column. I mean, credit side column. Why? Because creditors increases on the credit side. But if we pay these guys, if we pay this and it was never recorded on the creditors control, it will be captured on the debit side. Same, but if they say something like an individual creditor's balance was not updated by an amount of 5,000. So meaning we bought maybe some goods from that creditor for 5,000. You have to update the creditors list on the credit side by that amount of 5,000 rands. If maybe an individual creditor, if we paid them an amount and it was never recorded, it goes to the debit side of the creditors list. Are we together? Anything to do with an individual creditor, it affects a creditors list. Am I making sense? If
Yes,
they specify it's an individual creditor and they give you the name, just know that information has to do with the creditors list. That is if it is in a case where you are buying something on credit from that creditor. And then on the opposite side, or the contrary of the creditors recon, if there is anything to do with an individual customer or a debtor that bought some goods on credit from us, which was never recorded somewhere, just know it will affect the debtors list. Anything to do with an individual debtor, young man, it comes here. And anything else, it goes here. And it can be in two things, omissions or errors. Shall we do question 2.6 with some light now?
Okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now at least you have some bit of light. So I want to
Yes,
ask
sir.
you what to do with each one of those transactions, because I want to test your understanding. So the total of the debtors control column in the debtors allowance journal of 1.2 was posted to the debit side of the debtors control. What do you think there? Is that an error or is that an omission? That's what you must ask yourself when you look at a transaction, especially if you're dealing with a debtors reconciliation or if you're dealing with a creditors reconciliation. Am I making sense, Matuku?
Yes, sir.
Right. I'm going to read it again. So the total of the what? Debtors control column where in the debtors allowance journal. Now, I want to ask you a question. Anything to do with the debtors allowance journal, does it reduce the debtors control or does it increase it? Debtors allowance journal.
It decreases.
It decreases it, right? That's what you should,
Yes.
that's the principle. So I want to find out what they did here. So they are saying a total of the debtors control in the debtors allowance journal of 1.2 was posted to the debit side of the debtors control account, meaning to say they recorded something that has to do with the debtors allowance. They recorded it here on the debit side. So meaning to say they made an error. Am I making sense?
Yes, yes, sir.
They made an error, young men. So what is the error that they did? It's very simple. Let's quickly show it. So the error they did, young men, is this. They recorded 1.2 here, which was never supposed to be recorded that side. So we are saying this 1.2 that they recorded there, it's a mistake. It was not supposed to be there. It was not supposed to be there.
Yes, sir.
So that's an error that's happening there. It's not an omission. It's a mistake. It's an error. Are we together? So now we have to correct that error. When you correct that error, young men, you look at, they debited. So to correct it, I have to do the opposite. I have to credit the debtors control with 1.2. But at the same time, you have to then do the correct entry of that transaction. Okay, so in other words, you're gonna have, yes, 1.2 here. Sorry, it's not minus, man. It's supposed to be just 1.2. So you're gonna have 1,200 on the credit side. Now, what have you done there? You have just rectified this error that took place by recording this 1.2 on the credit side of the debtors control. What have we just done? We have corrected the error. That's the first thing we've done. But remember, this has to do with the debtors allowance journal. It is supposed to be reducing the debtors control. So I'm expecting to then see the correct entry where we put the 1.2 again on the credit side of the debtors control. Now, when we take the two amounts, add them together, how much do we get? We get something like 2.4. That is why you have 2.4 for that first transaction on the credit side of your debtors control. Does it make sense?
Sir, I don't think I understand fully, sir.
Where do you
I
not?
think I don't understand the part where they add the two together.
Do you know why they added the two together?
Yes, sir.
It's because of the amount of columns they've given you there. Otherwise, you see the way I recorded it. This whole thing, like this, it has to
Yes, sir.
do with transaction one. So we are saying in transaction one, first of all, they made a mistake by recording the 1.2 this side. So we're saying it was not supposed to be like that. So how do we then correct the mistake they made? So to correct the mistake they made, we're supposed to record 1.2 on the credit side to cancel the mistake first. Are we together?
Yes.
On the credit side? And then we have
Yes.
to then do the correct entry of that transaction. Instead of debiting it like the way they're done, they were supposed to have credited it. That's why I'm crediting this 1.2. Now, the limiting factor of your columns here is because they only gave you 10 columns to deal with 10 transactions that they gave you there. Am I making sense?
Yes, sir.
I mean, they gave you 10 rows, not columns. There are 10 rows in that, on page 53. Count the
Yes.
number of
Yes.
rows there, where they say number, and then you start counting from the first row up to the bottom part. How many rows are there?
Yeah,
You
there's
only
10. Yeah, there's
you only
10.
have 10. So obviously, if I'm to deal with the first transaction, how many amounts are there on the credit side? If I add the two together, how much should that give me?
Okay, that's true, sir.
You get what I'm saying? That's where that 2.4 is coming from. Do you get the logic?
Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah. Right. So that's where that 2.4 is coming from. So hence you notice for that first transaction, they only recorded the 2.4. But I wanted to show you where that 2.4 is coming from. So it's coming from these two amounts. So the first amount that you're seeing there is just canceling that error that they done initially. And then the second 1.2 is just to then correctly account for the debtors allowance amount of 1.2 that they mentioned in that transaction. So when you add the 2 on the credit side, it gives you 2.4. So that's why they put 2.4 there. Is it now making sense?
Okay, yes, sir.
Right. Then there's credit note number 2, issued for 100 rands, had not been recorded at all. A credit note that you issued, meaning to say somebody returned goods from you. I mean, they returned goods to you, not from you, but they returned goods to you as a business. So if it's a goods returns and we have not recorded it, where is it supposed to go? It's supposed to go here. Because if the customer, sorry, not there. Yeah, it's supposed to go here because if a customer returns goods, it will reduce whatever they're owing us. So it has to be put on this side. I'm talking about in the context of transaction number 2. Does it make sense, Matugo?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But because we've done this one, I want you to try to do it on your own. And then tomorrow in the morning at 10, when we meet, I'll take you again through question 2.6. We'll do question 2.7 and perhaps even 2.8 as well. Those are the questions I want us to do for tomorrow. But I want you to try and do this exercise of question 2.6 under exam conditions. Just try to do it based on what I've explained to you now. Try to do it under exam conditions just to test your understanding of what I've taught you today. Is it okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I think for now let's leave it here and then let's pick it up tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a 2-hour session from exactly 10 a.m. in the morning.
Okay, sir.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Sure.